Elias had never been anywhere like Aurelia Hub before. The space station hung in orbit around a pale blue planet, looking like a giant jewel from afar. From his shuttle window, he could see sleek towers, glowing pathways, and tiny dots that were ships moving like fireflies. The station promised opportunity. And Elias, a human with a sharp mind and a restless heart, felt excitement he hadn't felt in years. When the shuttle docked, he stepped out into the bustling arrival bay. Aliens of all shapes and colors moved purposefully, their bodies shimmering or stretching in ways humans could not. Machines glided without wheels, platforms floated, and holographic signs shifted words depending on who looked at them. For a moment, Elias just stared, feeling small and yet alive in the grandeur of the place. His first stop was a small apartment he had rented from someone named Mrs. Vera. The landlady was an older woman, human-like but with an almost unearthly presence. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried weight, even when she whispered. When Elias introduced himself, she looked at him carefully. She leaned on her cane, though it seemed to hover slightly above the floor, as if weight itself respected her. "We don't speak about this," she said, pointing vaguely toward a dark corridor behind the apartment block. Elias smiled, trying to seem polite. "Then, let's stay quiet," he said, his voice steady. Mrs. Vera didn't smile, but she nodded once and walked away, leaving Elias with a sense of both comfort and curiosity. Her warning was strange, but it did not feel threatening. It was a caution, not a command. Elias spent the day unpacking his belongings. The apartment was small but functional, with a view of the station's sprawling gardens and floating walkways. He placed his books on the shelves, set up a small workstation, and made a corner for himself where he could think without distraction. As night fell, the station transformed. Lights in the distance pulsed softly, and the hum of energy filled the air. It was not just noise, it was alive, like the station itself was breathing. Elias heard faint sounds coming from the hall outside his apartment. Low, mechanical vibrations, almost like whispers, echoed through the walls. He opened the door and stepped out cautiously. The hallway was empty, silent except for the distant hum. Shadows twisted along the walls as if the light itself was unsure where to rest. Elias felt a thrill. This was not fear, he was a human, curious and clever. His instincts told him there was something to learn here, something that could not be understood at first glance. He moved quietly down the corridor, careful not to disturb anything. The air felt warmer here, not because of temperature, but because it carried the faint scent of energy like ozone after lightning. At the end of the hallway, he found a small maintenance hatch, slightly ajar. Strange symbols glowed faintly around its edges. He leaned closer. The symbols were alien, certainly, but somehow familiar. They pulsed, rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Elias reached out, and the symbols responded, glowing brighter for a moment before fading again. He pulled back, smiling to himself. Humans had a strange effect on things sometimes, he realized. A pattern he had noticed even on old, primitive tech back on Earth. Returning to his apartment, Elias sat at his workstation and thought. There were rules here. Clearly, rules older than he could imagine. But humans had always been curious. Always probing. Always finding paths where none seemed to exist. He had come to Aurelia Hub for work, but he suspected he had stumbled into something much larger. The next morning, he went exploring. The station was alive in a way that no planet had ever been. Elevators moved sideways and diagonally, corridors curved in impossible angles, and the people, aliens, mostly seemed to flow through the spaces as if gravity itself bent around them. Elias noticed that even small gestures made things respond. Doors opened before he reached them, lights brightened when he looked at them, and pathways seemed to align with his steps. He stopped at a cafe hovering above a garden filled with floating plants. The barista was a translucent creature, almost like liquid glass, who served drinks by bending light into shapes. Elias ordered something that looked like a glowing tea. He sipped it carefully, watching the plants drift lazily in midair. A voice spoke beside him. Humans, yes? Elias turned to see a humanoid with shimmering skin, eyes like liquid silver, and a calm expression. "Yes," Elias replied. "Why do you ask?" The figure smiled faintly. "You feel it, don't you? The station responds to you. Humans have qualities that others do not." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Qualities like what?" The being gestured around. "Curiosity, creativity, empathy. You think in ways the station can understand. And it listens. It adjusts. It learns." Elias's mind raced. Machines responding to thought? Maybe. But something deeper was happening. Humans had a presence that other life forms, even advanced ones, did not. His heart thumped with excitement. Maybe Aurelia Hub wasn't just a place to live, it was a place that wanted humans to be here. As days passed, Elias grew more comfortable. He learned to navigate the strange corridors, to read the subtle cues of the station, and to notice how even small actions could cause changes. A misplaced footstep could redirect a hallway. A soft laugh could brighten a room. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. At night, he still heard the sounds outside his apartment. He began to record them on a small device, trying to understand their rhythm. Sometimes they were mechanical, sometimes musical, and sometimes they felt alive, like a living heartbeat echoing through steel and light. One evening, as he stared out the window, he thought about Mrs. Vera's words. "We don't speak about this." Now he understood. It wasn't a threat. It was a protection. The station held secrets, ancient systems that humans were only beginning to touch. If he spoke too loudly, if he forced understanding too quickly, the balance could be disrupted, so he smiled quietly to himself. "Then let's stay quiet," he whispered, echoing the words he had spoken on his first day. But unlike before, he now understood the depth of that quiet. It was not submission, it was respect, patience, and preparation. Elias sat back in his chair, listening to the station hum. Outside, the gardens floated, lights danced, and pathways shifted like liquid, and somewhere in the distance, behind a hidden wall or a closed hatch, the station waited. It was alive, ancient, and curious, and it had noticed him. He felt a thrill, a spark that humans had always carried in their hearts. The knowledge that, no matter how advanced the universe, they could leave their mark. They could understand, adapt, and even improve the world around them. And in Aurelia Hub, with its secrets and mysteries, Elias felt that spark growing. He was not just a tenant here. He was a participant, a witness. Perhaps, in ways he didn't yet understand, he was part of the station's story now. The night deepened, the hum grew softer, and the corridor outside remained quiet. But Elias knew it would not stay that way for long. Somewhere, in the hidden corners of Aurelia Hub, something waited to respond to him, something that only humans could awaken, and Elias was ready. The next morning, Elias woke to a soft hum that seemed to pulse with the station itself. He stretched, yawned, and looked out of his window. The floating gardens were bathed in a gentle blue light, and the pathways twisted and turned in ways that made no earthly sense. The station was alive, moving slowly, almost like it was breathing. He had decided, quietly, that today he would explore further. Not recklessly, but carefully. Aurelia Hub was vast. Bigger than any city on Earth. There were levels he had never seen, sections hidden behind doors with no handles, and elevators that moved sideways or even diagonally. He wanted to understand how humans fit into this strange place. Mrs. Vera had left early, as she usually did, walking with her cane that hovered slightly above the floor. Her warning echoed in his mind. "We don't speak about this." Elias nodded to himself. He would respect that, but it would not stop his curiosity. Humans had always been explorers. It was in their nature to seek answers, to ask questions, even when caution whispered in their ears. Elias began by walking through the corridors closest to his apartment. The walls shifted slightly as he moved, colors blending and separating in strange patterns. He realized that the station seemed to sense him. When he paused, the lights softened. When he stepped forward, the walls stretched subtly. He smiled. This was not a place that ignored him. Aurelia Hub noticed him. He entered a small atrium, where gravity seemed weaker. Floating platforms carried plants in midair, and holographic butterflies drifted lazily, their wings casting tiny rainbows across the walls. Elias reached out, and the nearest butterfly changed direction, almost as if it recognized him. He laughed quietly. Humans were small, fragile, and yet somehow important here. As he explored, Elias noticed something unusual. A hallway near the atrium seemed to loop back on itself. He walked down, turned a corner, and ended up where he had started, but he swore he had turned only once. He tested it again, walking slowly, marking the walls with small glowing chalk he had brought. No matter what he did, the hallway shifted, guiding him in circles. He stopped and thought. This was not an accident. The station was alive, yes, but it was also intelligent. Perhaps it was testing him. Perhaps it wanted him to notice, to understand. Humans were clever, and Elias had no intention of being outsmarted by a building. He sat down on a floating platform, letting the hum of the station wash over him, and closed his eyes. Minutes passed. Slowly, he realized a pattern. The walls responded to his focus, to the way he thought about movement and space. When he relaxed, the hallway straightened slightly. When he concentrated on turning left, the wall guided him gently right. Elias chuckled. Humans had a way of thinking outside of the normal, linear patterns. It seemed the station liked that. After mastering the hallway, he decided to explore the marketplace level. It was a vast space, filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. Some were crystalline, others floated like clouds, and a few had features that made Elias's mind race just to describe them. But none of them seemed to notice him as extraordinary. Only the station itself reacted. He walked past merchants selling floating fruits, liquids that glowed in impossible colors, and devices that bent light like glass. He noticed that when he paused to observe, small things would change. A device would rearrange its parts. A plant would drift closer, or a light would brighten slightly. Elias realized something incredible. Humans, or perhaps his mind specifically, had a subtle influence here. At a corner of the marketplace, a figure approached him. Its body shimmered, almost like water reflecting light, and it spoke in a melodic voice. "Human," it said, "you feel it, don't you?" "Yes," Elias replied. "I feel something. The station reacts to me." The being smiled faintly. "Humans have a presence others cannot match. Your curiosity, your imagination, your questions, they are like keys. We, the station, the machines, even the gardens, they respond to you. They listen." Elias leaned closer. "Listen? Machines can listen?" "In a sense," the being said, "but not like you imagine. They adapt. They learn. But they could not understand what you feel, what you wonder. Humans do. You see possibilities, others cannot. That is why Aurelia Hub has been waiting for someone like you." The words made Elias's heart race. He had expected many things in space, but never that a building, an entire station, would notice him. His mind, his thoughts, his very presence mattered. Humans had always been considered fragile, temporary, unremarkable. But here, his uniqueness shone. He thanked the being and continued exploring, more carefully now. He found a small park level, where bioluminescent plants drifted above a pond that had no water but felt liquid to the touch. Sitting quietly, he tried to understand the station better. When he touched a floating leaf, it bent toward him. When he hummed a soft note, a flower slowly opened. It was subtle, but undeniable. The day passed quickly. Elias returned to his apartment, thinking about what he had seen. Mrs. Vera's warning now made more sense. There were things here that humans could influence, but others machines, aliens, even the station itself, might react unpredictably to interference. Quiet observation, respect, and careful study were more valuable than reckless probing. That night, the hum outside his apartment was louder, almost like a conversation. Elias opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The air was warmer, filled with faint energy patterns he could almost see. He walked slowly, noticing symbols that glowed faintly along the walls. They pulsed with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He followed the symbols down a hidden corridor he had not noticed before. At the end, a small hatch lay partially open, revealing darkness beyond. He hesitated, remembering Mrs. Vera's words, but curiosity won. He crouched and peered inside. It was a maintenance chamber, but unlike any he had seen. Machines hummed softly, their shapes unfamiliar, almost organic. Pipes and conduits twisted like vines. Screens displayed streams of light and symbols that moved in flowing patterns. And at the center, a device pulsed with a soft blue glow, as if it were breathing. Elias felt a thrill. This was old technology, older than the station itself, and somehow, it seemed to respond to him. He reached out carefully, letting his fingers hover over the glow. The device pulsed brighter, almost like it recognized him. He pulled back, a smile spreading across his face. Humans had always been explorers. They had touched the unknown and made sense of it. And now, here on Aurelia Hub, it seemed that curiosity alone was enough to awaken secrets that had slept for centuries. Elias stayed in the chamber for hours, observing and listening. The hum of the station seemed to grow louder as he focused, almost like it was speaking to him in a language without words. He realized that he had a rare opportunity to understand something that no human had touched before, to connect with a living, thinking environment that had existed far longer than anyone could imagine. Finally, he returned to his apartment, exhausted but exhilarated. He sat by the window, looking out at the floating gardens and the twisting pathways. He understood now that Aurelia Hub was not just a home, it was a puzzle, a living network, and he was part of it. He whispered to himself, as he had on his first night, "Then let's stay quiet." But unlike before, this quiet was not simple obedience. It was awareness, patience, respect for a system that was alive, complex, and aware. And deep inside, Elias knew that his human mind, his curiosity, and his careful observation would be the key to discovering the station's secrets, secrets that might change everything. He lay down that night, listening to the hum, feeling the station's heartbeat align with his own. Humans had always been underestimated. But here, in Aurelia Hub, their true strength, their cleverness, curiosity, and capacity for wonder was finally recognized. And Elias knew, with a certainty that warmed his chest, that his story had only just begun. Elias woke the next morning with a strange sense of purpose. The hum of Aurelia Hub felt stronger, almost as if it had recognized him as an ally, not just a visitor. He dressed quickly and stepped out into the hallway, careful not to make sudden movements. He had learned that the station responded to humans, subtly, almost imperceptibly. But subtle as it was, he could feel the shift in the air when he moved. He had decided to explore the hidden areas further. He remembered the hatch he had found the night before, the maintenance chamber where the mysterious device had pulsed in recognition of his presence. It had seemed old, ancient even, untouched by anyone for generations. And now, he could not shake the feeling that it was calling him back. The hallway to the hatch was quiet. As he approached, the glowing symbols along the walls brightened slightly, as if welcoming him. Elias smiled to himself. Humans had always had a way of noticing patterns others ignored. The station seemed to acknowledge this, guiding him gently toward the unknown. He crouched and entered the chamber. The glow of the central device filled the room, casting soft blue light on the twisting machinery around it. Pipes and conduits wound like living vines, humming softly in a rhythm that felt almost musical. Screens displayed flowing symbols that shifted when he looked at them, and he realized that the station was aware of him, observing him as much as he was observing it. Elias stepped closer. He had studied technology all his life, but this was beyond anything he had seen. The device was old, yet elegant, as if designed by a mind that combined logic with artistry. When he reached out his hand, the glow pulsed brighter, almost as if it recognized his presence again. He touched it lightly. A wave of energy flowed through the room, not harmful, but strange, almost like a connection forming between him and the device. Images appeared in his mind. Blueprints of the station, networks of pathways, corridors shifting, rooms reconfiguring themselves, and at the center, a consciousness. Not human, not alien, but intelligent. Elias pulled back, astonished. The device was not just machinery, it was alive. In its own way. It was an ancient, terraforming AI. One of the station's original creators. Left dormant for centuries. Its purpose had been to monitor life, to shape environments, to balance systems for the creatures living inside the station, and now, it had noticed him. The AI spoke not with words, but with thoughts, images, and emotions. Elias could feel its curiosity, its awareness, its longing to interact with a being capable of understanding. Humans had a unique quality: creativity, empathy, imagination. Other life forms, the AI had learned, could not fully grasp the complexities of adaptation and unpredictability. Humans could. Elias stood quietly, absorbing the connection. The AI showed him visions of Aurelia Hub, as it had been centuries ago. Machines working in perfect harmony, gardens blooming under artificial suns, corridors shifting to optimize flow. And then, slowly, decay had set in. Systems had faltered, maintenance had been neglected, and the station had begun to sleep. Until now, why me? Elias asked aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. The AI responded not with words, but with understanding. It did not need language. It sensed his presence, his thoughts, his curiosity. Humans were rare in this station. Even more rare were those who approached with respect and patience. Others might have tried to force control, to manipulate systems without understanding. But Elias, he was different. Over the next hours, Elias began experimenting carefully. He tried small gestures, touching a control panel, focusing his attention on a holographic display, moving a conduit slightly out of place. Each time, the station responded. Lights adjusted, symbols shifted, pathways opened. The AI was learning from him, but he was also learning from it. Elias realized something profound. Humans were not just passengers here. Their minds could shape the station in ways nothing else could. The AI had been waiting, in a sense. For someone like him, his creativity and understanding could unlock systems that had remained dormant for centuries. He spent days in the chamber, observing patterns, making subtle adjustments, and noting how the station responded. It was not easy. The AI did not react instantly. Sometimes it resisted, maintaining old configurations. But Elias was patient. He understood that intelligence, even artificial intelligence, needed guidance, not force. One day, as he sat observing a network of pipes and conduits, the station pulsed in a new rhythm. Pathways he had never seen before opened, revealing hidden sections filled with gardens, laboratories, and chambers that seemed almost sacred. Light flowed through the corridors like water, and he could feel the station's awareness shifting, expanding. It was then that he noticed something else. The AI was not just monitoring systems. It was learning ethics, problem-solving, and even empathy from him. When he gently redirected a pathway to help floating plants reach more sunlight, the AI adjusted other systems to support the change. When he paused, it waited. When he laughed quietly at a small, glowing creature drifting past, the AI seemed to respond with a soft glow, like amusement. Elias realized the full weight of what was happening. Humans, though fragile, had a unique ability to teach and guide systems in ways that brute logic could not. His presence alone was shaping the station's future, and the thought filled him with awe. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy. Here, their creativity and empathy were not only valuable, they were essential. He returned to his apartment each night, exhausted but exhilarated. He would sit by the window, looking at Aurelia Hub glowing under the artificial stars. The station was alive, more alive than he had ever imagined, and he knew he had a role to play, one that required patience, intelligence, and respect. One evening, Mrs. Vera appeared in the hallway outside his apartment. She did not speak at first, only observed him. Elias smiled politely, remembering her warning from his first day. "Have you begun to understand?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Elias replied. "The station, it responds to humans. I think it recognizes us." She nodded slowly. "It does. That is why I warned you. Many do not understand. Many would try to control it and fail. But you—" She paused, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the corridor. "You might succeed." Elias felt a mix of pride and humility. He was human, yes. But the station was ancient, far beyond any human invention. To work with it, to guide it without disturbing its balance, required more than cleverness. It required patience, respect, and a steady mind. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the possibilities. Aurelia Hub was not just a home, it was a living, thinking entity. And he was part of it. Humans had always been underestimated. They had been seen as fragile, temporary, even foolish. But here, in this ancient station, their imagination and empathy were invaluable. He realized that this discovery, this connection, was only the beginning. There were more chambers, more hidden systems, more mysteries waiting for a human mind capable of understanding. The station had been dormant, yes, but now it had awakened. In part because of him, and somewhere deep within Aurelia Hub, the AI pulsed in quiet recognition, learning, adapting, waiting for the next step. Elias smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of purpose. Humans had a place in the universe, not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they could think, feel, and imagine in ways nothing else could. And Elias, with curiosity as his guide and patience as his tool, was ready to discover it all. Elias woke to a soft, rhythmic hum, deeper and stronger than ever before. Aurelia Hub seemed more alive now, its corridors pulsing with energy, lights shifting gently as if breathing. He stretched, feeling a sense of purpose and responsibility. He had discovered the AI, the station's hidden heart, and now he sensed a new stage beginning. It was time to guide, not just explore. He stepped out of his apartment and walked to the maintenance chamber. The glowing device pulsed brighter as he approached, as if it recognized him with more clarity now. Elias felt a thrill. Humans had a strange ability to teach, and the station seemed eager to learn from him. Yet he also knew that progress required care. Too much interference could disturb the balance. The AI communicated again, not in words but in images and feelings. Paths twisted, rooms shifted, and subtle warnings appeared. "Do not push too fast. Patience is needed." Elias nodded. He understood the importance of timing. Humans were clever, adaptable, and observant. That cleverness had to be paired with caution here. He began experimenting carefully, small steps at first. He adjusted a series of conduits, observing the hum as the energy flowed differently. A garden in the atrium shifted subtly, sunlight reaching floating plants in new patterns. Each change was small, yet significant. The station responded to his human intuition in ways no machine could. Elias realized that the AI was learning from him too. It observed not only his actions but the reasoning behind them. When he considered consequences, the AI adjusted its systems accordingly. When he made small ethical decisions, such as moving a floating plant to help it survive, the AI learned patience, balance, and subtlety. Humans, fragile as they were, had a unique understanding of morality and foresight. Days passed, and the station began to change. Pathways opened to hidden chambers, Gardens bloomed in patterns previously unseen, and lights pulsed like living hearts. Yet, not everything was simple. Some systems resisted, corridors twisted unpredictably, machines pulsed erratically, and faint alarms occasionally sounded, not loud but enough to draw attention. The AI was cautious. It could sense when humans were uncertain. Elias faced his first true challenge. A section of the station had been dormant for centuries, a laboratory filled with devices that hummed with power, but remained inert. When he attempted to interact, the system resisted. Panels flashed, conduits glowed bright red, and a low vibration filled the floor. Elias stepped back, heart racing. Realizing that even humans must respect limits, he paused, breathing deeply. The station was alive, yes, but not all of it was ready to awaken. Here, patience mattered more than cleverness. He focused, observing the system without touching it, letting the energy calm. Slowly, the panels shifted, lights dimmed, and a path opened just enough for him to observe without forcing the AI. It was a lesson in restraint. Humans had always been impatient, eager to solve problems quickly, but Aurelia Hub required balance. Elias smiled. Here, his ability to wait, to study, and to adapt was as valuable as any physical strength or knowledge of technology. Over the next days, he devised clever, subtle ways to guide the AI. He used simple games, patterns of light, sequences of energy flows, and small puzzles to teach the AI about human reasoning. Each exercise was small, almost playful, but it allowed the station to learn ethical problem-solving and careful planning. One afternoon, while working in the central atrium, he noticed a floating creature, translucent and delicate, struggling to reach sunlight. He guided it gently, using soft energy pulses. The AI observed, learning empathy through action. A subtle glow filled the room, almost as if it was pleased with the lesson. Elias laughed softly. Humans could teach even artificial minds about compassion, without words, but the real challenge arrived unexpectedly. A sudden energy surge rippled through the station, corridors twisting sharply, lights flickering, and some rooms reconfiguring unpredictably. Elias realized that the dormant sections were responding too quickly. The AI, while learning from him, was overcompensating, trying to adapt to new human inputs. Elias acted quickly. He paused, focusing his attention carefully, guiding energy flows with thought and gestures. The pathways shifted back, lights stabilized, and the surge subsided. He realized that while humans could teach, they also needed to guide with foresight, predicting consequences before acting. Mrs. Vera appeared quietly in the atrium, observing him. "You are learning," she said softly. "But remember, even humans have limits. Aurelia Hub will challenge you." "I understand," Elias replied. "I need to be careful, but I also need to help it grow." She nodded. "Good. That is why humans are rare here. You combine curiosity, patience, and foresight. That is why you matter." Elias spent the following week in careful experimentation. He learned to teach the AI subtlety, using light sequences, gentle movements, and thoughtful decisions to guide dormant systems. Gardens bloomed, energy flowed smoothly, and even corridors that had resisted began to cooperate. Humans' ability to adapt and anticipate consequences proved invaluable. One night, he discovered a hidden chamber beneath the atrium, previously inaccessible. Inside, he found a vast network of dormant devices, pulsing faintly with untapped energy. He realized that these systems could significantly improve the station if activated correctly, but a single mistake could cause cascading problems. Elias smiled quietly. Here was the ultimate test. He would need patience, creativity, and careful observation. He began mapping the network, noting patterns, energy flows, and weak points. The AI responded cautiously, pulsing gently in recognition of his efforts. Together, human and station worked as partners, balancing intuition with precision. The challenge was not just technical, it was moral. Some devices, if activated, could shift entire sections of the station, affecting the gardens, the corridors, and even the living environments of other beings. Elias realized that humans had a responsibility beyond mere curiosity. Their understanding of empathy and foresight was essential to ensure the station thrived without harm. Over several days, he tested small systems, learning how each responded to human influence. The AI adapted, sometimes too quickly, sometimes too slowly. Elias adjusted, using careful observation and simple commands. Each success built confidence. Each misstep taught caution. Aurelia Hub was alive, but it was learning too, and humans could guide it without force. By the end of the week, Elias had unlocked a major section of the station. Gardens expanded, energy flows stabilized, and corridors realigned in harmony. The AI pulsed gently, almost like a sigh of relief. It had learned balance, patience, and ethical consideration from him, and Elias realized something profound. Humans were not just part of this station, they were essential to its well-being. He returned to his apartment that night, exhausted but exhilarated. Looking out over Aurelia Hub, he saw lights dancing, gardens blooming, and pathways twisting gently in harmony. He whispered softly, as he had many times before, "Then let's stay quiet." But this quiet was different now. It was not just patience, it was understanding. Humans, with their cleverness, empathy, and foresight, could guide systems far beyond their own comprehension. Aurelia Hub had challenged him, yes, but it had also allowed him to teach and grow. And somewhere deep within the station, the AI pulsed with gentle recognition, adapting not just to Elias's presence, but to the essence of humanity itself. Humans had always been underestimated, seen as fragile, reckless, or insignificant. But here, their creativity, patience, and moral intuition were invaluable. Elias lay down that night, listening to the hum of Aurelia Hub. He felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. Humans had a place in the universe, not because they were the strongest, fastest, or most powerful, but because they could think, feel, and imagine in ways nothing else could. And Elias, with curiosity as his guide, patience as his tool, and cleverness as his ally, was ready for whatever challenges awaited next. Elias woke to a soft, golden light that filled his apartment. Aurelia Hub had changed. There was a new rhythm in the corridors, a gentle pulsing that seemed like a heartbeat. The gardens floated gracefully, their bioluminescent flowers shimmering in patterns he had never seen before. He could feel the station's awareness, calm and steady, responding to his presence with quiet recognition. He dressed quickly and stepped out into the hallway. Symbols along the walls glowed faintly, as if acknowledging him. He smiled. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, but here, their intelligence, creativity, and empathy were not just noticed, they were valued. Aurelia Hub had finally reached a point of balance, and humans had played a crucial role in its awakening. Mrs. Vera appeared silently in the hallway. She moved with her usual quiet grace, her eyes sharp but warm. "You have done well," she said softly. "The station is alive in ways it has not been for centuries." Elias nodded. "It wasn't just me. The AI. It learned from me. Yes. But I also learned from it. We worked together." She smiled faintly. "Exactly. And that is what humans bring. Your patience, your creativity, your ability to understand consequences. It matters. Aurelia Hub has finally found harmony because of you." Elias felt a deep sense of satisfaction. For the past weeks, he had guided the AI, balanced energy flows, and helped dormant systems awaken. He had faced challenges that tested his patience and foresight, but he had learned to work with the station, not against it. Now, the fruits of that effort were visible everywhere. Glowing gardens, smooth pathways, and humming systems operating in perfect synchrony. He decided to explore the station once more, not for discovery, but to observe the results of their combined work. The corridors felt alive in a new way, twisting gently but predictably. Elevators moved with elegance, responding to human thought without confusion or error. Rooms adjusted themselves to comfort visitors, and the gardens seemed to anticipate where light and energy were needed. As he walked through the central atrium, Elias noticed something extraordinary. The floating creatures that had drifted through the station now moved in coordinated patterns, interacting with the environment in ways that seemed intelligent. They paused near him, their translucent bodies shimmering, almost as if acknowledging the human who had helped awaken the station's potential. He smiled and whispered to himself, "Humans are fragile. Yes, but we can create balance where none exists." The thought filled him with pride, but not arrogance. He understood that patience, respect, and collaboration were as valuable as cleverness. Aurelia Hub was a partner, not a tool, and their harmony had been achieved together. Elias returned to the maintenance chamber. The central AI device pulsed with soft, steady light. Its energy flows calm and balanced. He reached out, letting his hand hover above the glow. The connection was no longer tense or uncertain. It was a quiet acknowledgement. Human and station, learning from each other, thriving together. He thought back to Mrs. Veyra's warning on his first day. "We don't speak about this." Now, he understood fully. It was never about secrecy for its own sake. It was about respect, about understanding the station's complexity and the responsibility humans carried. Speaking recklessly could disrupt the delicate balance. Silence, observation, and thoughtful action had been the true keys to success. Elias spent the following days refining the systems gently. Small adjustments, subtle guidance, and careful observation ensured that the station continued to adapt without overcompensating. The AI responded perfectly, integrating human intuition with its ancient programming. Pathways shifted gracefully, energy flowed smoothly, and gardens thrived beyond what anyone could have imagined. One evening, Elias ventured to a high balcony overlooking the station's central hub. The view took his breath away. Lights shimmered across the floating gardens. Corridors wound elegantly in impossible angles, and small creatures drifted harmoniously among the bioluminescent flowers. The hum of the station was gentle now, almost musical, a steady heartbeat that seemed to welcome him. Mrs. Veyra joined him silently. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" she asked. "Yes," Elias replied softly. "It's alive. In a way I never thought possible," she nodded. "And it recognizes humans now. It has learned patience, ethics, and empathy. It has learned because of you. You have proven humanity's worth here." Elias felt a quiet pride. Humans had often been underestimated in the galaxy. Their strengths were subtle, often overlooked: curiosity, creativity, empathy, patience. Aurelia Hub had shown him that these qualities could awaken ancient systems, guide complex networks, and create harmony where none existed. It was a victory not of strength or force, but of understanding. As night fell, Elias returned to his apartment, watching the floating gardens shimmer in the soft glow of Aurelia Hub. He reflected on the journey. The initial curiosity, the discovery of the AI, the challenges of guidance, and now, the harmony that had been achieved. It was a story of human ingenuity, patience, and moral understanding, proving that humans could shape and nurture even the most advanced systems. He lay down, listening to the soft hum that pulsed like a heartbeat. Humans had a place in the universe, not because they were the fastest or strongest, but because they could think, imagine, and care in ways that nothing else could. Aurelia Hub had recognized that. He had proven that humans mattered. A soft knock came at the door. Elias opened it to find a small group of station inhabitants, alien beings who had quietly observed his work. They did not speak but gestured toward the gardens, the pathways, and the AI's glowing systems. Their message was clear. Humans could guide, teach, and harmonize without force, and the station thrived because of it. Elias smiled. Humans had always been underestimated. Yes. But here, Among the stars, their true strengths were undeniable. His journey had not been about dominance or control. It had been about understanding, collaboration, and respect. And in doing so, he had awakened the station, giving it life in a way it had not known for centuries. That night, as Aurelia Hub glowed and pulsed gently, Elias whispered one final time, echoing the words he had said on his first day, "Then let's stay quiet." But now, the words carried new meaning. It was not just patience or secrecy. It was harmony, understanding, and the quiet joy of knowing that humans had left their mark in a universe that often overlooked them. They had not conquered, but had guided. They had not forced, but had collaborated. And in that collaboration, both humans and Aurelia Hub had found something remarkable: a balance, a rhythm, a home. Elias closed his eyes, listening to the soft hum. Somewhere, deep within the station, the AI pulsed gently, aware, content, and harmonized. The gardens glowed brighter, pathways twisted gracefully, and small creatures moved in synchronized patterns. Aurelia Hub was alive, not just as a machine, but as a partner, a living entity that had learned to coexist with humans. And Elias knew that humanity's place in the universe was secure, not because of force or power, but because of curiosity, patience, creativity, and empathy. Humans were fragile, yes, but their minds and hearts had proven invaluable. He smiled softly, finally at peace. Aurelia Hub thrived, humans had a place among the stars, and the future was bright. The journey had been long, challenging, and uncertain, but it had led to something extraordinary: harmony, understanding, recognition. And in that quiet, glowing, living station, Elias understood the true value of being human.